Good morning and welcome to Deep Dives with New Perspectives. Good morning, Merrylin LeBlanc.
Good morning, Michael Bartlett. And as we're ending the year, how are in a second year pretty much, even though the first one wasn't a full year for us Americans. How are you feeling as at the end of the year, Michael?
Well, today with Venus retrograding, with Mercury and they're all conjunct Pluto, it's quite a little interesting fuzz of energy, and Moon squaring it all from Libra. Fortunately, just for today.
Well, this is interesting because I was thinking about how Venus is not only ending the year, but she's actually starting the new year as well, because she'll be retrograde through a large part of January still, and her every 580-day retrograde cycle occurring. And and it's kind of it's interesting because right off the bat for me it's like connecting with old friends. This is very much and there has been quite a bit of that, interestingly enough, and also the recognition that the days or the years, we don't know this, whether it's days, years, hours, who knows, or minutes even, of being together on the planet is shortening. As we get older, that really comes to mind, and people that we've shared things closely with over our lifetimes are very dear to us. So that's a Venus in retrograde in Capricorn, spanning the old year and the new year.
And also those long-term relationships, right? Capricorn are those, shows us those relationships that we've really invested a lot of our time and love and energy into, and also those individuals who've also done the same with us.
Well, also, yeah, what's interesting about long-term things is at Christmas dinner with some friends, two people that didn't know each other got to know each other, but there was a connection to Harbin Hot Springs in California.
Wow.
And it was like this whole recollection of the history of that place, which, talking about new age hippiedom, etc.
And burned to the ground when the big California, one of the big California
Yes, the fires. Yes, that even came up.
Yeah.
I would I have not, when the fires have started I have not been back to California since the fires in the last few years have burned a large part of that. And a part of me doesn't want to see it. Just the memory is better than the present in my perspective, but who knows? I'm not sure. Plus, it's just so crowded there. It's so crowded in California.
Yeah, and it's starting to change to that here now. I mean, there's been so much building, and that's the other parts with this, Pluto, Capricorn, right? It's how much can we squeeze out of the environment? What else can we get? What else can we make?
Ooh, well, that talking about the Capricorn too, the in this coming year, I believe there's going to be 3 hits. The planet Pluto is going to can join a Pluto return, which we humans, unless somebody's keeping their age from us, approximately 250 years, a Pluto return for the United States. And and it's in that area of one of the charts for the United States that has to do with our economy. And our economy is going berserk at this time, in my opinion. It's like, and often with Capricorn and related to its planet Saturn, we think about limitations. And of course, this huge inflationary spurge has created a lot of limitations for many Americans. We often hear about the prices of things, and and the real estate prices, especially the land prices, especially. But how much are we hearing about what that's doing to people who are on fixed incomes? Retired people who are especially on fixed incomes. So,
Well, taking us back to California, I mean, what I'd say is I'm hearing more and more. I mean, and in Denver as well. I mean, we're seeing here in Santa Fe is an increased number of homelessness because people can't afford, the rents are going up. They're not making $100,000 a year to be able to afford, $2,500 a month rent payments. I mean,
well,
it's
one of my
ridiculous.
friends in the LA area has said that repeatedly. She says, well, people wonder, why there's so many homeless. Hello, wake up. But unless a retired person is at a point of owning a home, it's not affecting them as much, although depending on the tax structure of where you live, it could possibly be. But if you've decided to, like myself, give up all those um, problems and things that you have to do when you own a home, it's like shocking because, not accounting for such inflationary prices coming
Or
in.
surprise repairs.
Yeah. Well, there's that. I mean, but usually depending on how long you've owned a home, there's always, there's the roof, there's the leaks, there's the paint,
Windows,
the
the heating
windows.
system, the heating and cooling system. I mean, now like this, things are starting to get warmer everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. So, this Pluto too has a lot to do with the financial system, as far as stock market, um, shares.
I would even venture to say, with it being the final Earth sign and with Pluto being in it, and with Venus and Mercury there, maybe there's, and I don't know, maybe it's just because I just watched this movie last night, but maybe bringing the awareness of climate change and becoming aware of the fact of how dire the situation is on our planet. I watched the movie Don't Look Up, and it was just like such a dark comedy on Netflix. But Meryl Streep plays a Trump-esque sort of president. And everyone's relying on idiot savants, and I mean, it's really says a lot for our time, and just the lack of simple common sense, which I think is another aspect of Capricorn. This herd mentality of like, don't pay attention to what your feelings are and what you're seeing in front of you. Listen to what I'm telling you. Our whole, our system is built on that, right? That's the Wizard of Oz. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. But that's what we're doing with all these things. Like you said, we're not seeing these things. Yeah, because our newspapers don't want to say, like, look at the number of homeless. Oh yeah, how wonderful, your home prices have gone up, but did you realize that your neighbors have had to move out because they can't afford to live in your neighborhood anymore?
Yeah, it's well, let's face it. You're talking about money, which is, a kind of, like I said, a Plutonian
Especially
Mars,
in Capricorn.
Mars Venus kind of issue. And we have a government officials, by and large, who are so beholden to big money, to the multi-millionaire billionaire class. And unfortunately, they're not looking at people who do not have shelter, who don't have enough money for um, nutritional food, let alone doctor bills. Um,
Education,
and
the opportunities for higher education,
or higher education. Yes, exactly. But
all that.
education, talk about bizarre though with education. What was it I was watching? Oh, I guess it was that Meet the Press on this past Sunday, where they were talking about this critical race theory being taught, which no, they have this label, but what they're what that means and what they think is going on are like, do they really, you hear a label. It's just like when people say, oh, they're black, that all of a sudden all these flags go up about, oh, watch out, we're going to have crime in the neighborhood, we're going to have rape, we're going to have, whatever. It's the same kind of nonsense. It's like, what are you talking about? And then this principal who was terminated because of sharing things that were very appropriate to share, a black principal. I was yelling at the television screen saying, come to New Mexico. I'm sure they'll hire you. At least I'd hope they would. Get out of Texas. Just unbelievable stuff. But
well, Pluto return, I mean, I think, this next year, it's going to be, 3 hits of this. It's going to be, we're going to really be, I think we're going to really see some dark underbelly. I mean, when the last time Pluto was in this position, was basically a revolutionary statement, a separation, right? A separation from a king, from absolute rulership, the individuation of a country and of a people. But how we look at it back now, what we see of a crystallization of what you were just saying is a crystallization of the wealthiest people now stepping into almost a new royalty.
Yeah, but which was what the revolution too was about, the royalty of America not wanting to pay taxes to the royalty of, so, and because when we look at, Black Lives Matter and everything, we're still facing discrimination, and or what you might call a form of enslavement, economically speaking, that mostly affects people of color. There's very similar, what you're drawing are similar parallels to the founding of this country, and we haven't seen the deeper or dealt with the deeper issues of money, economy, and racial connections.
And I think there's no mistake. It's starting off with Venus in a retrograde statement, because when we think about back at that time too, women were property. Very few women held or owned any sort of power or property in that period. I mean, you had to be of exceptional birth. There had to be no male relatives for hundreds of generations, in a sense, but it was really, it's, and I always like to bring that part up, because it's like, when we talk about color, I mean, we need to even just bring it back to sex, but we need, it's like, it's this idea, like, there's just these 1 or 2 individuals that somehow have this knowing over the awareness of all of us. And it's interesting because, and so Jupiter's also leaving Aquarius, right? Leaving Aquarius and going into Pisces. So the wonderful benefit that we have now is the internet and the opportunity to go and research and see and learn things, and to see what other people are doing and what's really going on, not necessarily paying attention to what the news is telling us. It'll be interesting to see, like, are we going to see clamping down on what that information is, like we have been with, with the media, where certain areas of information are okay to display. I mean, our news media really isn't any different than the Chinese media.
Yeah, that's interesting with Jupiter and Pisces, and how things will spread and the connections won't be super clear, but there are connections. There's an article that I just saw this morning that I set aside to read about the fig and Samoa. And there was a kind of a subtitle about, if you love figs, but also love this planet, you won't eat them anymore. And what I gather, but I need to read the article, is that they're drawing a connection, because they said that, it will affect, we're talking about across the ocean, across the Pacific Ocean, but there's something about what the figs do that will affect the forests in the Amazon. and
It's
or
and
chemical.
it's also monocrop. I mean, we're taking the lungs of the planet, planting monocrops. I mean, it's like what the avocado industry has done to California. The rampant use and taking. I mean, if you see on Netflix, there's a show called Explained, and if you watch the thing on water, it's really quite amazing. And if you don't have any power, and you don't have any money, and you live near one of these places, you might find your well dry, and there's really nothing you can do about it.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
getting.
I am just reconnecting to Netflix. Finally watched Lucifer.
That's Pluto and Capricorn. I mean, that's actually a really, that's a traditional image in a sense, because, there's a way we look at him, it's just because it's just aggrandizement of the physical and not paying attention to what might be necessary to be taken care of. But what I like about the series is actually he has a conscience that starts building in there, which is really kind of very
He's
entertaining.
becoming human.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
But yeah, and I mean just the whole, well, goes to the Neptune and Pisces and Jupiter joining. There's this whole way in which he gets people to open up. Like, tell me
what you truly desire.
truly
That's Mars and Scorpio as far as I'm concerned too.
yeah, I don't get. I get the fact that it's really it's like,
It is
as I go
Pisces.
back to Jupiter
Yeah,
and
that's true.
that
Yeah.
that thinning of the veil of what we keep in our minds, so that
And
he
that
can.
gift that Zeus could get, because Zeus could give you anything if he was in love with you.
Yeah, yeah, and Zeus had a very Luciferian inside to him. So
Quite a hedonist.
mustiness, etc. Yes, yes, yes. The downside of well, it's sort of like the Jupiter Pluto connection, I guess, as well too. I
And
mean,
Lucifer is, Lucifer was, but basically the first angel, the bringer of light. And it's this interesting thing that falls along, it's almost along the lines of Lilith and also of Eve. This idea of the awareness of the individual somehow taints the physicality of our human form.
yeah.
Pluto, Venus, right? There's another way of it, right? There's this way, like how can we learn to value who we are as these transformational beings, as these physical ensouled beings?
Yeah. Well, there's something all about consciousness in that series.
Yeah.
And the I don't know what her title is in the series, psychiatrist or psychotherapist or whatever, but
Oh.
she's absolutely as curious to study as Lucifer is.
And what's neat about this is there's a similar series going on like on CBS called Evil, that is like playing with this really, and that's what you can get on, I think on Netflix might have it now or whatever, they're playing like the last season of it. But it's this very interesting thing about, where is the line between psychosis and actual evilness, right? Is it a way, sin, which in Latin and in most Latin languages means without, it means, to me, I think of it as just our separation from source or separation from God that makes us believe that we are not of God. But like I think I said last week or a week before, but I heard the song recently, it was called, "If we are made in God's image, then call us by our names." When I heard that line, it just like gave me like, that's such a great Scorpio moon statement, right? Call us by our, call me on the level of my soul, right? But not everyone's walking around in soul. Not everyone is here having a conscious lifetime. Some people are just here like going, wow, like I'm here just being.
Well, do you think, okay, all right. That what you just said goes to the point of how do you perceive people coming to Earth, being born here on the planet Earth? Do you think they just, what, I mean, this is where the myths of religion, I think, become helpful.
Right. I'm kind of a Taoist at heart. So I have this belief that, there's this source of the all that is, and then we are all each fragments, and we go through many, many lifetimes and experiences to become more informed, more enlightened. And at some point we rejoin the source with all of our level of understanding, so that the source gets to know what experiences are possible on this physical plane. It's like the closest thing that I can come to that allows me an acceptance for the horrible things that happen in life. Because it's like when you think about the all that is just simply wanting to experience what it is, it removes the it doesn't mean that murder is okay, but from a place of absolute, and this is so Aquarian, I don't mean to insult or do anything, but it's just like the way I kind of look at it to accept this is that it's to understand what that is like.
Oh, the experience of it, yes. And I can remember, I think it was in the Michael T channelings, where they said that we all choose to pretty much to experience everything over a number of incarnations. But I don't know if it's so linear.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Because the Buddhists have this idea, and this is where it's interesting, because like the Michael teaching and the esoteric teachings, like the Alice Bailey teachings, have this linearity to them. And then like the Buddhists have this idea that each time a person is born, they're carrying along and working on the energetic of that theme for the collective. They're not a separate individual. I mean, and that's what's, so I find it's, to me, like there's just, and I'm still sitting in that question, because I think like because Buddhism is such an old, old religion, and how they kind of like looked at everything. I'm like, oh, I wonder, how that, I can see how it can kind of be both. But here in the West, we're so individualized. So I think we make it that it's like, oh, that was me. I was Cleopatra in a past lifetime, or I was da 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 da. And I wasn't. I'm not saying I was.
No, you're doing this by way of example.
I actually had a very profound experience when I was 16 years old that I had on my own, that in going and seeing a psychic thereafter, she told me one of my past lives. And that was the experience that I had 6 months before the reading. And it was about doing stained glass. And there was no way that anyone would have pulled that out of their hat. So like for me, I know that there's some sort of a connectedness that goes back, because I feel it in myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that we're kind of talking about this, because I
very different than what we thought.
The show that I did on Moonwise this past Saturday, basically about the solstice and Christmas, but also I got into the biblical myth of Adam and Eve, and thinking that the original sin, I didn't say it this way on the show, but was basically about getting hooked on the five senses and suppressing one's consciousness. And because in Catholicism, you and I've been taught that Jesus came to clear us of the original sin, the original sin. Well, and then Jesus is called in many of the writings the Christ consciousness. And so, and in some of his teachings, you hear him say, I am the seed, I am the water. I mean, those aren't exactly, I don't remember the exact phrases, but he literally identifies completely with things outside of himself, which is an expanded consciousness. And so I just thought, oh, this whole story of, Genesis and into the New Testament is about consciousness.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, this we can launch off on a whole topic about that. I mean, Genesis in and of itself is just, yeah.
Well, we're at the beginning. We're, this coming, what's New Year's Day? Is it
Saturday?
Saturday. This coming Saturday. It's Tuesday right now. We're going to begin a new year. Every beginning is a Genesis. Not necessarily in the biblical sense, but you could make comparisons. So it's a time for looking at how we, you know, what we're going to birth in another year of COVID and another year of a strange kind of living that doesn't fit
And if we
most
look at it as,
of our lives.
the time that built up to getting to 1776 for us was a fairly violent period, and there were a lot of issues going on. And so, one of the things that I've heard recently too is that the January 6th event was practice. And if there's anything I would say a Pluto return would be good to show, would be something like, where we really actually see kind of like the full-blown underbelly of what part of our, some of the people here in our country actually have now started to believe hook, line, and sinker.
Oh boy.
And I think Pluto return. I mean, I don't, and the same for France. I mean, France is going to be seeing some stuff too, and France has been. I mean, we don't see much of the news about like a lot of the stuff that's going on over there, but I mean, they've been having large marches and reactions and problems, and
But this is, this is Pluto going through Capricorn
yes,
as it's, because when it gets into not next year, meaning 2022, but the year after 2023 is the year that Pluto will enter Aquarius. And yeah, but it's sort of like hopeful that new ways of interacting will start to become more important. I am just appalled when I hear, about some of the people from the January 6th insurrection being, charged, convicted, and getting these like 3-year, 4-year, 5-year terms. And then thinking about people, especially people of color, who have been imprisoned for decades for something they haven't even done. And even what it was, well, sometimes it was a murder, but I mean,
sometimes there's a broken tail light, and then they resisted
and then
arrest or something.
they got killed. Yes,
yeah,
exactly. But I'm going, there's something really out of proportion here.
something horrifically wrong.
Our judicial system, and this goes more to Jupiter and Pisces, and Jupiter will join Neptune. I believe in April, Jupiter and Neptune will begin a new cycle together in Pisces. And it's sort of the energy to really reimagine our judicial system. And it's funny because in the United States charts, Neptune plays, especially the declaration, plays a huge role in our jurisprudence. And, that's where I think the word was sent out, the publicity about it was an ideal system. And of course, though now we are seeing all the problems. And I think a good piece of that, of the problems, have to do that. It all goes back to money. I think it all goes back to money, but it also goes back to education and being really clear on what your beliefs are, not just spiritual beliefs, but beliefs about how people, what all of us should agree upon and how we should be treated and what we should all be having affordable and to us.
Well, I mean, the thing that I don't think a lot of us are raised with this understanding is wealthy individuals start out with opportunities for things that so many people just simply don't have. And so for, as far as even just understanding how to spend one's money, how to invest it, or even just the fact of having money and not ever having to worry that there will ever be no money in their mind because of how they're being raised. And so it's, giving those sorts of opportunities and knowing, the right places to go for this, for this sort of education, and knowing these friends in this places gives people these things that, like, so many of us just, we have to work really hard to get into those same situations. there is the opportunity, but it's not, it takes work. And there's Capricorn again, right? It's, that was the thing is, the streets were paved with gold. But I think that was only California, right?
Yeah, that's why there's so many people there still looking for the gold,
Definitely.
I guess.
Well, I think we should end this, but want to wish everyone out there a happy new year. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting year. So whatever you can do to take care of yourself, take care of your family, your home. Not meaning that from a violent standpoint, please, but from a standpoint of just making sure, I'd probably make sure they have, having a little bit of extra food on hand more than, than you usually need. If you've been considering solar, it might be a really good time to consider putting solar on your house. Just little things that'll kind of help, help with the security a little bit as you like.
Right. Well, happy new year to everybody. And may we begin to prosper in a way that is beneficial, not only for all of us humans, but for all other sentient beings on this planet, as well as the Mother Nature herself, the soil, the air, the rain, the water. Yes, all of it. So
I love that. May we find our rightful place within the network that is our world.
all right, bye for now,
Bless
Mike.
you. Merry, happy New Year.